Hey everybody, I just want to thank you for joining me at the C64 Commodore 64 Brain channel. Um, for those who are familiar with me already, you know that I put out quality content or try to the best as I can for the Commodore 64 machine language. And I was doing that pretty much a long time period. We'll probably say all the way back from 2009. I believe that's when it first started, somewhere 2009, 2010. And then worked on some game projects and stuff like that. So I know it's been a very long time, and it's kind of been like an on and off process here going on. Not to go into a whole lot of detail, but we've actually gotten out of our apartment now, and we're actually in a home now, so it's a lot more stable. Actually, even more of a recording studio, if you put it that way. Just a lot going on beyond all that, and just trying to figure out how to come to an end, not an end to the series, but an end to this Commodore 64 game project. And I'm looking at the last videos to go out, and it's basically on sound and music. And I'm like, why not just combine those two together and just call it a night for that? Because this thing has been an ongoing and obviously a drain trying to put this thing together and trying to keep up with it alone with the coding and stuff like that, because I haven't really been coding in a good while. And anybody who really knows anything about assembly language, it really does take a lot of time to really get invested. For example, I have this book on the machine mastering the machine code for the Commodore 64. This stuff takes a lot of good thought process to put into concept understanding, how to put assembly language programs, understanding from the binary bits all the way down to manipulating things at that level and being able to put stuff on the screen by understanding the visual aspects of everything. So there's a lot involved for those who are new to machine language and stuff like that. It's not just something you can easily just go through and say, hey, I'm going to make a game, I'm going to make a Flappy Bird, like people might have thought back in the days, but there's really a lot behind it. What I always like to tell people with, just to kind of give like a tutorial series, is take things bit by bit. So I know a lot of people don't like basic programming language, because a lot of people get in the aspect of saying that, basic is boring, it's slow or whatever, remedial, and doesn't really get me anywhere. But mind you, I started with basic, and a lot of the beginners, I mean, a lot of them, sorry, the people that are more advanced on YouTube and probably people you've met in person, the professionals in the industry of those times, even those up and coming with C64, the newer Commodore 64 Ultimate that's out there, they've actually had to do something from the very beginning. They had to start somewhere. So basic is a good ground to start at. I think that's a good ground zero to be at, because if you can learn all the basics, understanding how variables work, how conditions work, and stuff like that, and start even with the Commodore 64 understanding visual, putting sprites on the screen and stuff like that. Eventually, one day after you've gotten, I pretty much say, bored with that, by that time you'll probably be ready for some beginner assembly language. And at that point, what I recommend is just going through little simple routines. You might see them on YouTube where they basically just go up and they throw a display on the screen. Maybe they're changing a border color, throwing raster bars down on the screen and stuff like that. That kind of stuff keeps you going. So I really encourage people who want to learn assembly language to take the basics and go step by step. And that's the whole reason why I put this whole guide together. So I was trying to figure out a way to build games at a very minimalistic level, if you can put it that way, where people can understand it in beginner and from the advanced level. Of course, there's a lot of parts and moving parts just to try to get together a game and all that. Being able to put stuff together, a screen and stuff like that, and being able to get stuff moving, understanding the the architecture of how it's all together and put, is understanding how your C64 CPU processes information and stuff like that. There's a lot involved, and this is why I also recommend, this is a good book by anyone who, even whether you're learning basic or anything, this is an excellent book. And I remember the first time I picked up my copy, I looked at this thing and I'm like, this is neat. It's got a lot of cool programs in, and I was really in basic at the time, so I started kind of going through some of them, and just noticed that, oh wow, here's one right here. I can actually just start typing line numbers and just start seeing what it does. And of course, at that time, since I was into sprites and stuff like that, I jumped over to the video game chapters and started playing around with that, and I got sprites on the screen. And then I started beginning to understand the Commodore 64 is all about this memory process, really. It's all built on these memory registers, knowing where everything resides in memory. Once you understand where everything resides and how to manipulate it and control the cycles and the timing and everything, you can really get stuff going. You can get like a sprite on the screen and then control the timer clock, so you can kind of slow it down so that you can get your sprite to slow down and stuff like that. or back in the days, I just created simple repeated loops to slow it down, but that's not the recommended process doing that. And then, of course, you get into stuff like scrolling, vertical scrolling, horizontal scrolling. It's all covered in that book as well. Gives you some beginner aspects. A lot of people like to start with the marquee to scroll, where basically, moves the scroll display across the screen and stuff like that. Being able to scroll an actual screen, you need to be able to keep track of the X and Y of a map, and you're basically plotting out where you want that map to be in its own position, and then you're keeping track of those scroll lines as you're going through it. And there's a coarse scrolling, and then there's a regular fine scrolling as well. So again, recommend books like this to kind of start. One thing I've been more dedicated to doing lately, and this took a lot of practice. This is not something, and I want to confess, this is not something I've actually done all my life. But I've actually more recently, if you've actually followed my Facebook channel, I've actually gotten into more extensive reading. And I don't just mean like picking up maybe a chapter and reading it and then maybe reading another chapter and then quitting and not coming back. I mean, I would pick up a book and just focus on it until I'm done with it. And I found like by doing this, I was able to go to another book and another book, and I can't show you here, but I have a whole bookshelf over here. If I diverted my camera a little bit, you could probably see it right there. There's a whole bookshelf there. And I'd already finished probably about 30 books in a row. And no joke, I was actually able to read all these books and started putting that into concept. And I realized as soon as I did that, I could do the same thing with these. I could start reading through these. Now, this one's probably not a good one just to read straight through, but if you find a really good like a book on machine language and you start reading through it, I mean, this one itself is probably not the best example because it's just programs, but there are some that will really take you in the heart of the assembly language and the heart of how the machine thinks and all that kind of stuff. And with that, you can start learning more, and I can start learning some of the tricks now that I'm more dedicated to reading and trying to basically stay, on top of things. I think I can probably start working out better ways of getting projects out there and actually making more sense of them instead of just kind of jumping all over the place and doing random stuff. And of course, now, as people already know, we now have ChatGPT, right? So if I get stuck on something, since we have those language learning models, I can go out there and I can start, learning from those and stuff like that. And that's one of the most incredible things. I even use it in my job where I can basically, we use Copilot. We can go in there and just ask a question. You may not get it right the first time, so you ask another question because I work in web development. And eventually, it'll get your stuff on the screen and put stuff in an order. So I don't know how good it is with the Commodore 64, and I've seen a few on YouTube where they claim it's not the best, but I think any language learning model, you just have to keep teaching it, like teaching a dog new tricks. You have to keep teaching it until it finally understands, and you say, no, that's not correct, and eventually the AI or the bot starts understanding and putting things into more concept. So I'm going to try stuff like that, investigating AI and see maybe if I can fix some of the problems with the game itself once I get back into it and stuff like that. And like I said, I just want to finish this one out because I never proposed that I was actually going to write a game because that is a very complicated process, and it doesn't just involve one person unless you had, maybe you were retired and you had all the time in the world, but I don't. I have a full-time job, probably like a lot of people out there, and I have to dedicate time to my wife and stuff like that, and my marriage, and of course our new home, of course. Yay. Stuff like that is going to take away time and stuff like that. And now that they actually got me more days in the office downtown, I have to drive down more days, so stuff like that. But anyways, it's been an interesting journey. So you see, I haven't given up things. I still got my beloved Commodore 64 sitting in the background. And I'm setting up a whole station here now where I can kind of do some cool things with switching between one computer. I have an Atari computer. I can switch between that and switch over to the Commodore if I wanted, stuff like that. So yeah, a lot just talking about, kind of rambling about here, but the point I'm making is in a small way, I'm back, but I'm not saying I'm going to be posting a video every single month or whatever, but I'm going to keep trying to stay on top of it. And I do want to try to finish this series here, basically getting the sound out and the music, and probably try to merge that into one. Even if I don't get the music right, at least I can get some sounds in the game and just kind of call it, a project completion at that point. So yeah, those kind of stuff. There are a lot of projects I built in this time while I was learning it, and I learned a lot of cool tricks along the way. And I'm always interested in learning about your tricks and the things you've learned and your journeys and stuff like that. And also, you may not be aware of, also, if you've checked out my Facebook channel, I don't have a switch display. I can show you right here because I haven't set it up. But I'm actually redesigning the C64 brain site. I'm actually building it from scratch now, basically in HTML and CSS instead of trying to use WordPress and stuff like that. So as a result of that, it's going to be super, super fast because basically I'm in full control of how the static code works, and I don't have to depend on plugins and stuff like that to run things behind scenes. And of course, JavaScript's running in the background and stuff like that. So it'll be a lot more effective. And I think that'll be a great win in the end. So those kind of things are on the surface and the horizon, so to speak. So I'm trying to see what else I can kind of come up with. Maybe I'll throw out some little programs here and there once I get through this game project thing and finally get that off my chest, because I feel like in a lot of ways that's kind of stalled me and delayed me and almost made me give up many times. Now, I don't usually give up on things anymore since I've read 30 some books and I'm still going, and I have like a whole stack I'm still going through, and even reading one right now. Right here, it's actually the First Men in the Moon, H.G. Wells. So almost done with that one too. That kind of stuff keeps your brain going. It keeps you wired. And my focus is now on track, where I don't veer off here, veer off there, and want to go watch a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff like that. Although I do watch YouTube videos, but I try to stick to a schedule more routinely now. So and this is a lot. I just wanted to kind of put that out there for you. I didn't just want to leave that short out there saying, hey, I'm back. And they're like, what's that supposed to mean? So thanks, guys, for sticking me on this journey. I know I threw out a lot of stuff out there tonight. And also I've mentioned stuff like I was going to do a Patreon and stuff like that. Of course, that kind of fell through. I never really got into the TikTok scene. I'm glad I didn't, because basically their RPM is just dropped through the floor at this point. Nobody makes really any money on it anymore. Not that I'm making any money on YouTube. I never really did. I might have made like $100 a year, to be honest. It was more about the passion. I mean, it was nice to sometimes get a payment, but it never really, put gas in my tank maybe. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little short session into the new adventure for the Commodore 64. And stay tuned, because it's just getting started. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you always hit the notification bells, so when I post a new video, you get that notification. And feel free to subscribe to the channel. I know this is just me rambling and talking, but I'm putting out here where I'm going and what my plans are, and hopefully what we can achieve down the road here. Hopefully this isn't just a one and done. I want to try to keep this to some kind of a routine, even though you don't really make a lot of money on YouTube anymore. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day, night, wherever you are. Bye.